Episode 5 begins with Rick visiting Lynx in the hospital after his exam results are announced. Lynx congratulated him and excitedly asked if they were still on for drinks. Rick was pumped until Lynx mentioned visiting his home. Suddenly uneasy, Rick joked that Lynx should wear his best armor for protection. Lynx, confused but intrigued, shrugged it off and headed over. When Lynx arrived, he was shocked to discover that Rick lived in a demon lord's castle. Inside, the place was surprisingly nice, and Rick apologized for the long trek. Lynx mentioned he hadn't seen any monsters along the way, to which Rick replied that they tended to avoid the castle, though Lynx's armor was more for protection from the chaos within. As they stepped inside, Reinette welcomed Lynx, and Alice came charging down the stairs, accidentally launching a massive lightning spell at him. Rick pushed Lynx out of the way, leaving a gaping hole in the wall. After scolding Alice for her magical mishap, Rick reminded her of the no magic rule indoors, although he knew she'd probably forget the moment she got bored. Rick encouraged Lynx to explore the castle while he played with Alice. Feeling overwhelmed, Lynx looked out the window and spotted Mazette working on some impressive military-grade weapons. Curious, he approached Mazette, who welcomed him and introduced him to a weapon he affectionately called Patricia. Lynx was blown away when he pulled the trigger, realizing just how powerful it was. Continuing his exploration, Lynx stumbled upon Braun's room, where he found an orc surrounded by books. Braun explained his love for reading, though he had been too busy training Rick to catch up on his collection. When Lynx expressed interest in training with Braun, the orc agreed, clearly amused by Lynx's enthusiasm. Later, Rick went looking for Lynx, hoping to grab those drinks, but Mazette informed him that Lynx had gone into the forest with Braun. Alarm bells rang in Rick's head. He knew Braun's training methods could be dangerous. Meanwhile, Lynx was precariously perched on the edge of a cliff with heavy weights tied to his ankles. As he fell, convinced he was done for, he began saying his goodbyes, but thankfully landed belly first on a boar Reinette had been eyeing for dinner. Once safe, Lynx thanked Reinette, who recognized Braun's handiwork and asked if he had pushed him off the cliff. Lynx confirmed, explaining Braun had told him to run down the cliff with weights before sending him flying. Lynx expressed how close he felt to death, and Reinette warned him that Braun was notorious for getting Rick killed during training. Eventually, Lynx was dragged back for more training. By the end of the day, he was exhausted but alive. When Rick found him, he asked why Lynx had agreed to train with Braun, knowing the risks. Lynx replied that Braun promised him light training, but Rick cautioned him never to trust Braun's word. He also warned Lynx about Alice's antics and Mazette's seriousness, but the others shrugged it off, saying this was just how things were. Later, while sipping tea and waiting for dinner, Lynx complimented Reinette's cooking and questioned Rick about his relationship with her. Rick insisted there was nothing romantic, citing their age difference. Lynx called him out, saying he saw the affection in Rick's eyes and encouraged him to express his feelings. When dinner was served, Lynx praised Reinette's cooking as the group devoured the meal, requesting seconds. With Rick distracted, Lynx turned to the others to chat. Meanwhile, Brost informed Lynx that Rick's innate skill, *Reckless Soul*, could only activate under specific conditions. If it ever kicked in, Rick would easily surpass everyone else. When Rick and Reinette returned, Brost had a question for Lynx about the 6 magical stones, known as the jewels, said to be essential for defeating Kaiser Alipate. Lynx recognized them from legends but thought they were mere tales. However, since Rick took them seriously, he offered to check the Central Agency's confidential information. After that, Rick sought more relationship advice from Lynx, admitting his previous attempts with Reinette hadn't gone well. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, a girl named Rai was mopping the floors, feeling unsatisfied with her menial task. Suddenly, she overheard Rick and his team requesting a quest. Unfortunately, they needed a party of 4 with at least 2 A-rank adventurers. The guild master suggested finding a random person to join them, and Rai, eager for real adventure, was invited to fill the spot. Unfazed by the odd team makeup, Rai introduced herself and agreed to join. As they set off, Alice detected something in the air. Rai asked what they were searching for, and Rick explained they had a tip about a magic stone nearby. Rai was intrigued but warned that it could be dangerous. Confident in her abilities, she claimed she could handle any monster, despite being only F rank. Soon, Alice spotted a wyvern, precisely what they were after. Rai panicked, knowing how powerful wyverns were, but Brost simply slapped the creature away to summon reinforcements. Tired of her whining, Brost asked Rick to take Rai somewhere else. As they walked out of the forest, Rai scolded Brost for attracting wyverns, but soon they heard the sound of wyvern bodies hitting the ground. Brost and Alice had jumped into action. Stunned, Rai nearly got taken out by a red wyvern. Rick saved her just in time, but she was still terrified, realizing a rank adventurers struggled against such beasts. However, Rick then walked up to the red wyvern and knocked its head off with a single punch, leaving Rai utterly speechless. The next day, Rai reflected on her experience and was glad to see the guild master, who expressed relief at her survival. He informed her that Rick's team was the strongest on the continent, composed entirely of S-rank adventurers. Inspired, Rai vowed to train hard until she could reach S-rank herself. She handed her broom to the guild master, eager to start training. Meanwhile, after returning from the wyvern hunt, Rick and his team successfully retrieved one of the jewels from the wyvern's den. Thanks to this treasure, Mazette pinpointed the next jewel's location in Heratopia, a city famous for its colosseums and powerful fighters. And with that thrilling conclusion, we wrap up episode 5. If you enjoyed the chaos, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell, because you'll want to be the first to witness Rick's next attempt at adulting. Who knows, it might even involve less property damage.